how can we separate some of the noise and the media hype cycle and really drill in on what this can do for us, right? And I think it's what I'm excited about and what we're testing a lot about is the opportunity to use these technologies to take away the drudgery, so to speak, and really give what we've been using the phrase AI superpowers, right, to our team, right, so that they have the opportunity to spend more time with clients, to spend more time on the deep science and engineering, and less time on the sort of day-to-day.
Welcome to the Trailblazers podcast presented by BST Global, where we feature the visionaries who are helping to shape the AEC industry of the future. My name is Javier Baldor. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at BST Global and your host. Today, I'm joined by Jason Miller, Head of Innovation at Ramboll. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about Ramboll and yourself as well, please.
Sure. I'll start with Ramboll. Ramboll's about an 18,500 person company. We operate all around the world, providing a range of services from architecture, building design, transport design, bridges and tunnels, energy systems, so wind turbines, solar panels, other sorts of renewable energy systems, water recovery, reuse, reclamation facilities, and environment and health consulting, and as well as some management consulting around sustainability particularly.
Yeah, we'll go talk about that a little bit in a little bit. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So been at Ramboll now for a number of years, but I jokingly say if you look back at my CV, I've changed my job about every 27 months on average. So, but at the moment, I'm responsible for innovation, digital transformation at Ramboll, and also was the technical lead on our AI strategy process, which we just wrapped up at the end of last year. Before that, I was a chemist and a nuclear engineer by training, and so I spent a lot of time as a consultant, and then very quickly realized that data and technology were just really critical for the way that I wanted to do my work and to delivering good outcomes. So that my career then started to take more and more of a technology bend over time. So.
Well, chemistry and nuclear engineering, and I saw on my research you're a Vol, right? University of Tennessee.
That's where I got my, that's right, exactly.
There you go. Love that. Tell me about your personal journey. You spoke to it briefly there. Starting, where you did, and now to head innovation globally, nearly 20,000 person firm. Talk about that story. Talk about that journey.
Yeah, so it's I've been very lucky, right, in my career to have a lot of great opportunities, and it sort of started off with within technical project work, right, where we were bringing to bear different database systems and language analysis systems, mobile applications, things like that. Trying to think about how can we deliver this project better for our clients, right? And so it sort of started off there, I think, as project responsibilities, and then I was really interested in driving more, thinking about what we could do to improve the offerings that we have. And I got very lucky. I had some great mentors who sort of gave me opportunities to start off with starting at a sort of a local office level, and then regional, and then national, and then stepping up. So I've been on a nice ladder and progression in that point of view, right? So it hasn't been quite as startling as maybe it would have been otherwise.
Yeah. So. Talk about your passion. Where did that passion for data come from?
Yeah. I can't do my work without it, right? I mean, it sounds trite, but I think a long time ago, right at the beginning of my career, I started to really realize that the best solutions I could offer were really going deep into the data, and it became evident, that the data, quote unquote, the data was going to become ever evolving, ever growing, right? Mm-hmm. So we were going to end up in situations where common projects, you're dealing with millions of documents, unending amount of analytical data and other structural information, and so it just became really obvious in some respects that this is a need, right? And so I started looking at it sort of like, well, what are we going to do about this? And discovered that the opportunity is just vast, right? That that with all the new technologies coming online, it really expands our capability to deliver, and that got me excited because I started thinking, oh, now I can do more for my clients than I could before.
What are you currently curious about? What are you exploring right now, and why?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's AI, right, is the sort of theme of the moment to a large extent, right? And I think it has been a big subject for us. Like I said earlier, we did a big strategic review last year, sort of talking about generative AI in particular, and what that means for us. Because I think we come from a background where Ramboll's been doing a lot of work in natural language processing and computer vision and those sort of traditional machine learning, deep learning approaches, right? We've had products in that space for 15 years or more, right? So we've sort of looked at that. We've been building on that, but there's a lot of question about generative AI, right? And how can we turn it to actually create sustainable solutions, right, for our clients, which is Ramboll's big focus. And how can we separate some of the noise and the media hype cycle and really drill in on what this can do for us, right? And I think it's what I'm excited about and what we're testing a lot about is the opportunity to use these technologies to take away the drudgery, so to speak, and really give what we've been using the phrase AI superpowers, right, to our team, right, so that they have the opportunity to spend more time with clients, to spend more time on the deep science and engineering, and less time on the sort of day-to-day. So that I think has been really exciting for us over the last several months.
Ramboll, clear leader globally in sustainability. I want to dive in a bit on your sentiments there. Gen AI, what are specific use cases that you're seeing and applying Gen AI to, and why? And what are the prizes that you foresee?
So I think we started our Gen AI journey probably where most people did, looking at the large language models and the knowledge management use cases, right? And it's a little bit because it gives us an opportunity to learn, and it's in a less risky environment, right? Because obviously, before we take any new solution to clients, we want to make very sure that we have high confidence, right, and that we've managed the hallucination issues, and that these models aren't black boxes, right? At least for the work that we're doing with them. And so what we've looked at a little bit is to say a good place to start is with our internal knowledge management, right? Because then it stays inside the family, right? So you can accept a higher risk level, and at the other hand, it's a great opportunity for people in the company to learn more about what others do, our project histories, and simple things like policies and procedures. So that has been an early use case for us. It's not a particularly exciting use case, but I think it's been a good use case for learning. And a lot of our data scientists, engineers, and developers who are working on a lot of the models have been diving in there. And now we're starting to see the flywheel spinning. Okay, now that I've learned how to do this, I can take this forward. I think what we see when we look beyond that sort of entry use case is that you start. You could. It's almost an unending cornucopia of options, right? And so the real question goes to where's the client value and where's the business value that I can deliver, right, with this. And so what we're looking at right now is within some of our consulting practices, right? How can we take these large language models toward client-facing products, right? So help us with document and data analysis and review. Again, like I said, trying to take some of that more mundane work out of the way and bootstrap the work that our consultants and engineers are doing. And also to help us do more co-creation closer with clients, right? So one of the things that's interesting for us is, can we use these models for conceptual design, right? Doing architectural, transport, buildings design, to start talking about options, right? And can we actually use these models in the conceptual stage to help test questions we might not otherwise have tested, right? Because you can take the next step beyond parametric design to really generative design and test and try and solve these problems in different ways, right? Can we reduce carbon footprint in a new building structure? Can we change the way that a master plan is shaped because there's an option that we didn't actually consider, right? That we might be able to bring to the table with the technologies. So those are some of our next use cases. Beyond that, I'm super excited to sort of see the interplay between IoT, sensor technologies, and AI, right? Because going back to this ever increasing data flow, right? The more we can use AI to monitor the built environment and the natural environment, the more we move away from a sort of reactive stance to predictive, right? And yeah, that's in the future for us.
That's cool, super cool. Talk about maybe what you're seeing in terms of the reception from your professionals at Ramboll. How are they embracing? Are they embracing this? Are they excited about it, or a bit cautious? What has been that initial reception? And then the other lens is the clients. How are you seeing your clients' reaction to generative AI, many of these new emerging technologies that you're speaking to?
Right. Internally, I think there's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of interest. We have long waiting lists to get into our pilots, and I find myself saying "not quite yet" a lot, which I never like saying, because my job is to say yes a lot. So saying "not quite now." So there's a lot of interest. Particularly, I think from some of our early career team, right, who really are going to see this as it's going to change their entire working life, right? So they're super interested in getting engaged and taking it forward. We do have a lot of questions, right? We have interest, but we also have questions, right? So internally, we're asking ourselves a lot of questions about, are the uses that we're talking about, does that actually make sense with our sustainability mission, right? Because generative AI runs on a lot of servers, right? And so you have to talk about, what's the footprint of what we're doing? Is it aligned with our vision? When we talk about ethical AI, right? There's a big piece of that for us around is it truly sustainable? And so we're having a lot of discussions internally about what we mean when we as Ramboll talk about ethical AI, sustainable AI, right? What's that balance? So super interest, but a lot of questions, I think, on the testing side from clients. I guess I would say enthusiasm, but a lot of questions, right? Because it's most of the conversations we're having are focusing more on, well, how can you help me? How is this going to help deliver? What's Ramboll bringing into this space? When we can show specific use cases, people get excited about it, right? So for example, we've done some work on helping reuse disused office space, right, by doing AI simulations with building and property owners to think about how you could best use the space. People get super excited about that idea, but it is a little bit. Talking with generative AI with clients is a little too far away, right? Because they're just like, "What do you mean?" So you have to take it into the value, and then we are getting interest, but still, I think a lot of questions about how are you validating this, how are you securing it, and are you using my data to train it? Obviously, is a common question.
100%. Future work. What is the skills of the professional of Ramboll tomorrow need and beyond? What are those core pillars? Obviously, deep domain engineering, design, that goes without saying. Beyond that, what is the plus in your view in terms of additional skills?
I mean, there are some key underlying personality traits, right, around curiosity, openness, and willingness to change, right? Because the industry's been changing a huge amount over the last decades. That will only accelerate, right? And so a little bit of a comfort, so just getting a little comfortable with the change is sort of a key underlying personality trait. And a lot of the things that we try and talk about with our change management is around shaping why we think this is a good story, right? How we think it will help our team, and then sort of getting engaged with that from a more technical point of view. I think I've joked that everybody's going to be a data scientist, right? And it's not a joke. And so, we are seeing that already in early career team members coming in from universities with a lot more skill sets in that area, right? Yeah. And that's only going to accelerate, right? The way that building information management, geospatial management became a core part of curricula, these sorts of ways of working with data, understanding, how to interrogate data sets and work with the different model tools is going to be key.
So they're coming in, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
That's great to see. I didn't know that in terms of, and that's wonderful to see that the curricula is really adapting to really begin to provide those foundational pillars for
It's
not only
early.
for our industry, not only for our industry, but for any industry. It's one of the hottest domains, without question. Sticking on the data thread, talk to me about how you rolled out your data strategy at Ramboll. Talk about the pillars of that. Talk about the ambition and the goals behind that.
So, I mean, I think one of the things that we've talked about is how is as part of the AI strategy process, right, was that we saw a reboot of our corporate data strategy as really foundational to driving value from AI, right? Because you can't do anything with AI without data to train it on. Otherwise, you're just using publicly available data. Everybody else has that. What's your differentiator, right? So we talked very early that reviewing our data strategy with a lens around AI was going to be a key part of the foundation for us. And so when we looked at that, it's, the first thing we sort of said was we want to pivot this a little bit, and it's not a technology-driven process, right? Data architecture is obviously a key piece of it. Having the discussion about moving toward common cloud sources so that it's easy to train models and that we have properly tagged data. And that's all important. But what we talked about was it is really this challenge of the client business case, right? When we talk about building a data strategy, we can establish certain corporate principles, right, around data security and availability and ownership, those sorts of questions. But then when you actually talk about implementing that strategy, you really need to build in from the very beginning this concept of client value use cases, right? And that's how you start the wheel turning, right? Because we find that it's a lot easier to talk about change and ask people to work differently if we can sort of say, we've started now with a client value use case. Yes, we know we now need you to work with your data in a different way, learn different storage approaches, but look at the value we're creating. This is why you want to come along on the journey, right? So that sort of iterative approach, not trying to eat the elephant all at once, has been a key piece for us.
Very interesting. It almost seems that you're starting from the outside in. The lens is start with the client in mind and
Right.
work backwards.
Right.
Very Amazon-like, I might add, in terms of working backwards, in terms of start with the client's ambition, start with their goals, and then work backwards in terms of the value proposition.
Right.
To achieve that, as opposed to starting, hey, this is cool tech. Hey,
Exactly.
What can we do this without having that North Star and,
Right.
and that mission defined? So maybe maybe some further thoughts on that. Is that it's very clear to me that it seems that that's what you all are doing.
Yeah, that's been a big push for us over the last couple of years because specifically with data, Ramboll was founded in 1945, right? So I've lost track of how many exabytes of data are hanging around, but so there's a question about you can't transition at all because the cost and the time to do that is just prohibitive, right? And so one of the things we really talked about is what's the valuable data. And in order to do that, you have to talk about the problem you're trying to solve, which brings you to the client sectors and segments and challenges. And so that's, from a data perspective, that's really how we're looking at this, is how do we value data? We want to we want to improve the way we collect, manage, and use our most valuable data first, right? And so that has been a lot of the effort, has been very much about what is our most valuable data. And we find that we get great conversations about that when we're talking to our clients, our partners, and vendors, and again, a lot of our early stage colleagues who come at this from some of the different perspectives,
Yes.
right? So that's a little bit of that side. The way we approach it with data grows out of the way that we've been approaching our investments in innovation and digital transformation, because we basically said we will invest on an escalator of annually increasing investment, but we want to target those areas where we're actually solving a client problem. Right? It's all about, for us, it's client centered, drive the value, solve the sustainability challenge that they're facing, and then that's how we shape our investment and our data management.
Data strategy, the correlation or tie to digital transformation.
Yeah.
Connect those dots for me. How overt is that connection? How foundational is one to the other?
They're foundationally linked, right? Because one of the things that we actually had to start with was a very painful process of looking across our portfolio of digital tools. And I think at one stage, depending on how you wanted to define a digital tool, if you wanted to talk about it as, each version of different platforms is a different tool set because it needs different support. I think there was one point in time where we were looking across our engineering analytical tool set, and we basically said, so we've got a new tool set for every employee, right? And we've made a big push to sort of talk about, no, wait a minute, we need to talk about privileged platforms, where we really want to try and consolidate our work, transform that work into the most modern platform that offers us greatest flexibility and capability, because then we begin to store data in larger data sets, right? Because the data needs to be accessible before you can do anything with it, right? And so that transformation around the way we do design, the way we do consulting, is key, right? Because you have to change your approach in order to take advantage of a lot of the modern tools, and without that, no reusable data, and without reusable data, then no valuable AI. So.
Scale of impact. We're at the AI Summit. You'll be speaking here. Super appreciative of that. What's the scale of this impact of generative AI, other emerging technologies that come off that, that are branches off of AI? What is your personal take in terms of its impact, not only at Ramboll, but perhaps the industry?
It's. I like to remind myself that it's early days yet, right, for a lot of the generative AI, and so because scientists and engineering by training, the error bar on what we talk about is large, right? But I think it's clear these are truly transformational technologies. So. As part of our AI strategy process, we actually we brought in some outside consultants to help us do an outside-in look at, if you look at the different personas that work across Ramboll and the different engineering, consulting, business enablement spaces, from what we can see right now, how will they be affected and how will it change our delivery? And I think one of the things that was super interesting was we concluded very early that talking anything beyond 18 to 24 months was just made us all very uncomfortable, right? Because the error rate could be very high. But we really looked inside that period, and we basically say within the next 2 years, we expect 20% of all the work we do to be affected by AI. And that's our current work. Now, that affected by doesn't mean automated away, right? It just means, you'll use an AI tool to deliver that building design, for example. But that's a very substantial impact, right? So substantial that it starts to raise questions about your business model, how you approach clients, and that's only looking at the offerings that we currently deliver. That doesn't include the whole vast ocean of what we will be able to do with AI that we can't currently do, right? I mean, we have some AI computer vision tools that we're using for biodiversity monitoring, and it's really interesting to have conversations with clients about them because we'll go in and we'll talk about, large linear infrastructure monitoring, and the client will say, well, we have this process where we try to evaluate the amount of invasive species that are present in our right-of-ways and things like that, and you can actually turn to them and say, well, do you just want a map to all of them in the entire country? Because we can just do that now, right? And so, it's 20% of what we currently do, plus this whole new scope of what we will be able to do. So it will be transformational, right? And we've made pretty substantial organizational changes internally and big investment changes for Ramboll to try and grapple with that. I think, at all of our AEC peers will see that same sort of change internally. I think we've had conversations with deans of different engineering schools about they see such a substantial change in education, right? Because if you are using AI tools, that's probably a lot of the work that you first do when you come out of school, right? You get your degree, you go to work as an engineer, and a lot of what you're doing is pretty repetitive, simple work to learn the basics. Well, you won't do that anymore. Right, and so how do you now train the next generation of engineers to work with AI from the beginning, but also make sure they understand the details, right?
Critical thinking too. I mean, you think
right,
about
exactly.
this. You have this Google generation now, this AI generation. Where does that critical thinking, come into play? That's going to be an interesting dimension.
It is, right? Because the models are not human, right? They are an artificial intelligence. They are not human intelligence, right? And so, I'm sure you've seen this in your personal use of the models, right? They make mistakes in very unusual ways, right? So, there is a lot of critical thinking involved in making sure that you're validating your use of the model and not just thinking about it like, oh, it's another human colleague. It's not, right? It's a new type of colleague. It's a new way of working, and so you have to start testing the outputs in different ways. Yeah, so it's a very different approach.
It's going to be interesting, where artificial intelligence meets human intelligence. That nexus. The whole professional engineer and perhaps is also a prompt engineer.
Exactly.
Where you're providing those inputs, those questions to train, teach those models. So it's going to be interesting times. That engineer is going to be multi-talented, multifaceted.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and it requires a lot of other changes around us, right? If you just mentioned the professional engineer, the prompt engineer, right? Within the U.S., right, where we have professional engineering certification state by state, how do we address the question of bringing AI in, right? How does a professional engineer certify work done by an AI, right, without deeply understanding the model? And to a large extent right now, we don't understand how the outcomes of the different models, right? So I think there'll be questions about how we certify, how we regulate, and in more regulated design spaces. I think there are going to be a lot of questions about business model and client approach, right? Because we have to be realistic, right? Everyone understands the ability of AI to reduce time commitment on tasks, right? So, but if you're still delivering a high value, sustainable design, is the value of your design around the time you put building it or the outcome? And that's a huge pivotal discussion, right, about how we value the work. So there's it has a lot of ripple effects, I think.
It's a massive ripple effect, to your point, in that bridging that divide in terms of going. And I've been in this industry for over 3 decades. It's remained unchanged.
Oh, exactly.
It's brains by the hour, time, materials, and now going into this value model, outcome based, shared outcomes. That however that's termed, it'll be an interesting time for our industry. Any further thoughts on that? What is your take in terms of that, the horizon for that to really come into play? Because it's been something that's been discussed for some time, but it has not taken shape. Perhaps this is the vehicle to do so in this AI era.
It's probably the change. The change will now probably be much larger, right, of a larger scale, right? Because a lot of the automation, digital transformation capabilities that have come into play over the last decades, right, with the move from paper to 2D BIM, 3D BIM, for example, in that space. That has all had huge impact. We don't, but and now we do more work, right? Right. The design is more validated. There's hopefully less rework once you get to the construction stage, right? We bring new materials in, again, reducing carbon footprint, for example, or energy efficiency of structures. So there's an opportunity. So that's how we've sort of consumed the time to date. We've learned how to do a lot of things very easily, and we've just built on to our scope, right, and deliver a better product. To some extent, that will continue with AI, right? Now I don't need to spend time on this. I will now spend time delivering a better design. The difference with AI may be that it reduces the hours, takes so much of the time out that it destabilizes that process, right? And then I think the question is, where can you have a conversation about co-creation with the clients, right? And where can the client actually have the freedom of movement to have that conversation, right? Some clients are in an environment that if you can co-create with them, work with them in a different way, deliver a better product sooner, then that's great. They'll be happy to pay for that. They see the value of that immediately. They'll be happy to pay for that. Other clients who work in, in government clients, for example, right, that work in a very regulated environment, may not have the freedom to have, at least right now, to have that discussion about moving away from a traditional time and material model, low bid model. Those are discussions we're going to have as an industry, right? Because otherwise you really risk destabilizing the industry and the ability to deliver the designs.
We'll close with this. I know you mentioned earlier through your efforts with the outside consultant 2-year lens. I'm going to take you a little bit further out.
Okay.
So no right or wrong answer. 5, 10 years out, what does this all look like? In not post this AI era, but in the midst of this AI era, what would you expect? What do you what would be unexpected? What's the scale? What does this look like in that 5 to 10 year horizon for Ramboll and for industry at large?
I think within 5 to 10 years, we're really going to be talking about ourselves more as data consulting companies, right? We'll have to figure out how to put a D in somewhere in the AEC mix, right? Because I think more and more of what we do will be a move toward a data product model, right? So the industry is very project based, always has been, right? Deliver a structure, a design, a consulting project to a client. That will change, right? And we will see this move toward reusable data products, scalable data products. That will change the way we do work, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't expect us to be doing the same amount of work with massively fewer people, but I expect us to be doing a lot of different kinds of work with the same people we have now, right? So I expect to broaden our capabilities with that in the next 5 to 10 years. It's within 5 to 10 years, I think pretty much everything you do will be touched in some way by AI or a data product. So it really will require a big change organizationally in how we work with clients, how we do our work, and how we deliver it. So, yeah.
Love it. Data first business.
Data first business.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. Data first products. I think you're spot on that, my personal opinion. Jason, just a privilege to have you on our podcast.
Yeah,
thank you for joining us at our AI Summit. Looking forward to your remarks. Wish you and Ramboll the very best as you take on these ambitious challenges in this era of AI. All the best to you, and thank you again for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invitation.
And thank you all for joining us on this segment of the Trailblazers podcast. Until next time, take care.